Everybody, welcome back to another video from JNJtabletop. Today we are going to do the first video in a series of videos where we'll be talking about the Feywild and all sorts of things surrounding them, just leading up to the new D&D adventure, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is going to be released on September 21st. So stay tuned because we got some fun stuff planned.
This video in particular is just going to be an overview slash commentary on the information that's given in the DMG, which is actually located on page 49. And we're also going to have a link to it in the description down below for the D&D Beyond link. So go ahead and feel free to click on that and read along, or if you're listening to this on your phone, watching YouTube like I do sometimes in the car. I don't know why I'm saying I do that. I should probably be more safe when I do things like that. But nonetheless, maybe you click on the link later. So, Josh, the DMG, it's not a lot of information when it comes to the Feywild and a lot of the different planes of existence here, but a lot of it really is just like conceptual. Like doesn't show like a map of like the summer court or anything like that when it comes to the Fey. So there's a few quotes that I wanted to just share. The first one being, the Feywild, also called the Plain of the Fairy, is a land of soft lights and wonder, a place of music. Oh, and by the way, death at the end. Just let's just throw that in there. At first it sounds so nice and so like, oh, this sounds like this could be fun. Just slip that right in there. It's almost like it sneaks right in, like it doesn't fit.
Even the way that they word that, as silly as it sounds, it kind of is in itself an example of the Feywild.
It's
Because
perfect.
it can literally be that, like, oh, here's everything nice and everything's fine, and look at that sunset and death. Like, and now something's trying to kill you. Now nature itself is trying to kill you.
Similar to the Shadowfell, the Feywild is another like parallel universe or plane of existence, right? So like if you've ever watched Stranger Things, you have the Upside Down, where it's like everything that's in the real world, or in D&D terms, the material plane, it's mirrored in the Upside Down, but it's like darker. That's like the Shadowfell. So for this one, for the Feywild, it's like the downside up, which is the same as the upside down, right? Because if the upside is down, then the downside is up. Anyways,
I would prefer to call it the topsy-turvy, just because I feel like that
okay.
sounds more like whimsical, which,
That is
like,
how they would
one
market it.
the one word that, like, that comes to mind for the Feywild is, like, it's whimsical. It feels like it's just that's just I don't use the word whimsical often, but it's the first thing that comes to my mind every time I think of the Feywild. It feels whimsical, but it is dangerous, right?
Oh, yes. It is probably because of the feeling of whimsy. That's what makes it the most dangerous.
That's a really good point, because it almost like you let your guard down. Another example would be if you've ever played Undertale, where at the beginning of the game, where there's this like nice little flower and you're talking to the flower and it's like, oh, hey, life is great. You look like you're new here. We should be friends. Here, take these love friendship pellets. And then, like, it's trying to kill you. And, Happy Face turns into like this crazy, evil, like demonic smile thing. And you're like, whoa, like, what's that? That's kind of what the
Yeah.
world is like.
Yeah, I know we've
Um,
done some creature features, and actually both have been could be considered fey creatures in one way or another, with the Banshee and the Will-O-Wisp. But we have another one that we're looking into doing on Red Caps, which could look like cute little creatures, except they're like little demonic gnomes that have strengths of 18 and are gonna kill everybody. That's the Feywild and how it could just get nasty and trick
yeah,
you.
that's another thing to expect to find in the Feywild. Tricks, games, bargains, little things that, like, oh, sure, like, I'll take that bet, or I'll enter into this pact or agreement with you, and, like, suddenly, there's a lot more to it than that, and they take their deals very seriously. I would expect to find a lot of, like, illusion magic and, like, charm spells, traps, like that kind of thing. And the other thing that I think is interesting there is the creatures there. I feel like they don't normally just straight up, like, tell you lies, but they will almost
Yeah.
always give you like half truths and
Yep.
like they're doing their best to deceive you and just kind of mess with you.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it's because they really have some nasty motives, or maybe it's because they're just like they like to screw with you. Like you'd never really know, and that's part of the danger of it.
If you're an adventuring party and you're going to the Feywild, what kinds of creatures would you expect to find? I guess you can expect the unexpected sometimes, but obviously you got some elves and Eladrin, but
Mhm.
there's some others too. What are you looking at when you're thinking Feywild?
Dryads, satyrs, pixies, sprites, centaurs. You know, I don't see like minotaurs on that list, but I'd say like a minotaur as well.
That feels like that would fit.
Yeah, like quicklings, like any little nasty things or not nasty things, like just fairy type creatures, as well as like blank dogs, fairy dragons, tree ants, unicorns, even though unicorns are a celestial. But
It depends on which version of D&D you're looking at.
yes, it does. But there's also some nasty things like hags, blights, like whether it's twig blights or there's another form of blight. I forget what it's
It's
called,
twig
but
blights,
you
vine
know,
blights.
vine blights. Oh, those things are nasty.
There's another one that
Um,
is escaping me at the moment. Maybe you can throw that in the comment section. I'm pretty sure there's
um,
three.
but you also expect to find like goblins and ogres and even like some types of giants, and none of those are fey creatures, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I think Pathfinder, actually, goblins have more of a fey feel to them.
Hmm.
So that could be a fun way to kind of have some crossover. I don't really get the. It's not D&D versus Pathfinder. Like, use Pathfinder lore in your D&D games and vice versa. Why not? Have fun.
Yeah.
There's a certain theme there, but then, like you said, you don't have to be a fey creature to be encountered in the Feywild. And
Hmm.
that can be fun. Sometimes it's really fun as a DM to put something that does not fit at all. You want to freak your players out? Do it in the Feywild and do that. So they
Yeah.
also have a little section here in the DMG about the. It's like a little text box. Normally you'd see it looks like you'd see in an adventure module, and it says the Seelie and the Unseelie Fey. What's that about, Josh?
Essentially, from what I can gather, and they really give you little to no information on this in the DMG. So shame on you, Wizards of the Coast, because like there's what 4 paragraphs on the Feywild in the DMG.
It's not a lot, and there
That's
are
shame.
some
That's
other
shameful.
source. Yeah, there are some other source books. Like Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is going to have some
Hmm.
like information on some things with like the Eladrin, but they really don't give you too much. And we're going to have some more links in the description that are going to be helpful as far as really fleshing some stuff out if you're interested.
Hmm.
But yeah, the Seelie are kind of like the light
The light,
Fae.
not
You know.
necessarily the good though, just the light.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep. Yep. So then the Unseelie would be the dark.
Yeah,
The opposite. But I like that you make the
exactly.
distinction. It's not necessarily good and evil. It's light and dark.
Yeah. Because if they exist in the Feywild, they're really just like, how could I describe fey creatures? They like to party. That's it. Like,
Yeah,
whatever seems fun for them, they're gonna do it. They don't really care if people get hurt in the process. They just want
that's
to
true.
have fun, mess around, cause some confusion. Whether you're like a Seelie, which I think is more like Pixies, Elves, Eladrin, or the Unseelie, which I believe is more like the Drow, Darklings, and like Yethhounds and those kind of things. I think they all just they want to party.
Just want to get together and have a good time. That's it.
One of the really cool concepts for the Feywild would be like the crossings and how all of that fits together. And that is one thing that I think they did flesh out fairly well in the DMG and the limited information that they have in there.
I agree. It's a little more open ended, and just they give a few examples of things that could work for your game. And obviously, you can change that to fit however you feel. But usually, a Fey crossing from the material plane to the Feywild, it's almost like it could be like a near perfect mirror. So maybe like it is a beautiful meadow in the material plane. And then once you're in the Feywild, it's also a beautiful meadow, or there's like a pond or some kind of nature setting. Maybe it's only open during like a full moon or on a specific day once a year at dawn. Anytime you pass through here, yep, you're in the Feywild.
Hmm.
There could be something, a certain item someone's carrying. There's a lot of great examples there. But One thing I thought was pretty interesting was that Fey Crossings can be closed if you drastically alter the environment on either side. And I think that that could be fun. So, like, if someone wanted to close a special gate, that would all of a sudden be a very interesting event for whatever stories you're trying to tell, right? So, if a lot of times this would be in a nature setting, so maybe there's some druids that really they go back and forth to the Feywild once in a while. Maybe that's how they find cures for certain diseases because there's plants that are native on that side. Whatever it could be, you could really tell any story you want, and they may have some kind of deal that they've struck with the Fae on the other side, and it's their duty to keep this thing from being closed because that's part of the bargain. There could be a lot of different things that Josh might be getting inspiration while we're talking about this video right now.
Sheesh. All I have to say to that.
But there's a lot of different ways that you could take creatures like an archfey or creatures that are in charge on the material side, and what's that relationship like? How does that affect the Fey crossing? Is there a particular item that's important to make it work? Is it some kind of special ritual or holiday, and is there something involved there? Use your imagination and take this Fey crossing and make it special in your games, because this is going to be one of the things I think that really shines, especially if it trips out your players just from encountering one randomly.
Absolutely.
That'd be fun.
The other thing I really like about the Fey Crossings and when they talk about the mirror world is there's one example that they give you in the DMG where it's like you might have some ruins in this one area, but on the Fey side of things, like if you end up going to the Feywild from that place, it might be like a massive structure that houses some sort of like archfey.
It's really nice to show an odd or change on something simple, or just a different take on the same thing from one side to the other.
Next, in the DM, if we're going through like the DMG stuff, they talk about like optional rules that you have there. I'm just going to read what they wrote because this is one of the best things that they wrote about the Fae, in my opinion. Tales speak of children kidnapped by Fey creatures and spirited away to the Feywild, only to return to their parents years later without having aged a day and with no memories of their captors or the realm they came from.
Well, how does that work, Josh? I mean, that's creepy as anything.
That's a description of essentially the memory loss and the time warp effect that could take place from a trip to the Feywild. If you choose to use them, and I strongly suggest that you use these rules, you don't have to go as intense with the time warp, and I'll explain why in a second. But memory loss is essentially any creature that leaves the Feywild must succeed on a DC 10 Wisdom saving throw, or they don't remember going to the Feywild. So, like a successful save, like memories might be a little bit hazy, and then of course, like if you do like a remove curse or anything like that, then the creature will be able to restore the memories. But also, like elves and anything with like Fey ancestry will just automatically save. And then you have time warp, which time warp gets it can get a little crazy, right?
Yeah, but there's just something so fun and interesting about it. Like everything about the Fae is dangerous, and this just feels like such a Fae danger. Like, it's not violent. It's not like but it's heavy.
It's not violent, but I would almost, again, I'll explain why in a second, but I wouldn't roll on this table for it. I think that the DM needs to decide, well, all right, so essentially, time warp. Time seems to pass normally in the Feywild, but if they spend more than a day in there or a day or more in there, suddenly they realize that when they come back, there's a table you got to roll on. Essentially, it's a D20 table. It's a 1 to 2. Days become minutes. 3 to 6 days become hours. 7 to 13, there's no change, so time passes equally. 14 to 17, days become weeks. 18 to 19, days become months. And on a natural 20, days become years. So essentially, you could spend 10 days in the Feywild and it could be 10 minutes. Could be 10 hours, could be 10 days, could be 10 weeks, 10 months, or 10 years. It's a very cool concept, and it if that's something that's known, it almost adds like a respect and a fear of going to the Feywild, whereas I don't think that's really present in most people's games. Like I think of like the Critical Role when they go to the Feywild. It's like, oh, like maybe we'll go to the Feywild. It's like a very like, oh, why don't we do that? You know, like whatever.
They did roll on it. Or
They
Matt,
did.
he did, yeah. And they did manipulate this a little bit in some stuff. I don't know if you finished campaign one.
I did not finish
Okay, so
campaign
I
one,
won't go too
but
crazy on spoilers. But
no, I don't. I think he portrayed it wonderfully, and those series of episodes on the campaign one of Critical Role are great inspiration for how to run like Fey. But a lot of the time, people are not really worried about it. But if it's a known thing that you
yeah,
could spend 3 days there and it might be 3 years, like I think your players might be a little bit worried, taken a
oh
little
yeah.
bit more seriously when traveling there.
Like you don't just go to the Feywild because it's
Yeah.
fun. You go because you
One
have
does
to.
not simply go, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. It adds. I don't think any of the other planes of existence have some kind of consequence like this that could happen. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section. And great, you'll teach me something. But I agree with you. I think Matt Mercer did a great job portraying Fae, some Fae-like encounters, and what it's like to be there. But there's also some other places that you could draw inspiration from because as far as what the information in the DMG goes, that's actually it. We went over the entire section with you right now.
And we added a lot.
We
Believe
did. We did. I mean, there's some movies, TV shows. I mean, like classics like The Wizard of Oz, Chronicles of Narnia, Alice in Wonderland. I mean, these are some classics. I know, Josh, you're going to do a video on The Green Knight as part of this Fae series.
Mhm.
Never Ending Story. I mean, Hocus Pocus, if you need a good example of how hags might function, that's a silly and fun one. Legend, you want to throw it back? See Tom Cruise when he was a very, very young boy. Actually, TV series that came out on Netflix last summer, Cursed, that had a very strong themes of Fae in there, as well
Yeah,
as even the classic Midsummer Night's Dream. So
yeah.
there's a ton of
Mid-
places to draw inspiration from.
Absolutely. Midsummer Night's Dream is like the classic example of Fae. Same with Alice in Wonderland, really. But
Did William Shakespeare inspire the Fae? Is that where this came from?
maybe he took a trip to the Feywild and then like it just had hazy memories of it, and that's
Yeah.
how he.
And maybe like in a year he'll be back, but the days became years. So maybe he's not really gone.
Oh man. But like Cursed, you mentioned that I didn't watch that, but from what you told me, it's kind of like Arthurian. Anything like King Arthur that really does Merlin justice is gonna have some Fey themed tomfoolery in there.
But Josh, you shared a link with me while we were looking at this, and I believe it's someone by the name of Garrett Chapman. And he's got a Google Doc that he has collected over 27 pages of information on the Feywild, and it's a whole bunch of D&D lore. And I would highly recommend you click that link down there if you are interested in running some Fey adventures and things. And it'll really help make things nice and cohesive if you're going to run a Feywild adventure.
Yeah, definitely check that out. It's not all from D&D, but I mean, how could it be? They don't really put a lot of Fey information in there. So this was our first video going over the Feywild and everything. We gave you all the basics. We're gonna go into some concepts, some characters, some all sorts of other things coming up. If there's anything specific that you want us to talk about or questions that you have about the Feywild, drop them in chat or in the comments, because we'll make it a point to try to talk about those and make a video about those. We're going to be doing Fey themed videos from now until at least September 21st, maybe further than that, maybe more than that. But if you have any fun stories or experiences from sessions that, or you've either taken your players to the Feywild or you've been a player going to the Feywild yourself, let us know about it, because those are always fun stories and we'd love to hear them. So please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and we will see you on the next one. This is not an old joke. I want you to know that.
Sure, Josh.
That's who you look like when you make that face.
I'm just going for Grumpy Cat. That's it.
That's good. You got it.
Or like that baby gif where it gets sad. It's just like,
Yeah. Grumpy Cat is another good fey creature, I think.
I think you might be right.